Steel Curtain Network.
Touchdown! Touchdown para Calvin Austin! El Monte Washington es arma. ¿Quién más? ¿Quién más? DJ Watt!
What is up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome back to another post-game show. It feels like it's been forever, but the Steelers win. They win 4 in a row, beating the Commanders 28-27 in Week 10. This was a game to remember. I am Jeff Hartman. Brian Davis is at the game. He's going to try and join us here shortly, but Dave Schofield is with me. Dave, what's up?
Ooh, I know sometimes Big Bro on Scobro Show, he wants to breathe in the sweet smell of victory in me. I just want to breathe out because that one was crazy. That one was crazy. I thought there for a minute I was going to look like a fool for what I put in our article with our for our parlay picks. I'm like, I don't know why Jeff and them are so afraid of the money line and they want to take the Steelers with the 3 points. I'm like, you're really losing a bunch of money by a 1 or 2 point loss. And that's what it was what it come down to. But it didn't. It didn't. Yeah. The Steelers, they made a lot of mistakes. I already had one Commanders fan tell me they felt that the Commanders made a bunch of mistakes. Well, especially the one to end the game for them. I think the Steelers made more, but I'm looking at it from a black and gold perspective. But that's going to happen sometimes when you're playing good teams. The Steelers, once again, I don't feel that they played their best. We'll break into parts where I don't think they were. But there were there were times that they played great and not so great in the same position with the same unit. So a lot to take in. Just very, very happy, whether it's 1 point, whether it's 31 points for the Steelers to get the win.
That's kind of your knee-jerk reaction. I'll give you mine. And that is that was a really fun game. Like that was a game that you like up and down. You like some weird plays, whether it's the fake punt. We're going to talk about the fake punt for sure. You had some key turnovers. You had big plays made on both the offensive side and the defensive side of the football. Of course, we look at this and we say, what a fun game that was. Why the Steelers ended up winning. But nonetheless, it was an entertaining football game as the Steelers advanced to 7-2. And the Commanders now fall to 7-3. Not that it matters. They're in the NFC East. So this is going to be a fun one. But like you said, Dave, there were a lot of issues with this Steelers victory, meaning there were players that didn't play too well. So we, as always, are getting some super chats piling in. Let's get to those now. That's plain and simple. Maddie gives us $4.99. He said, Super Bowl contenders, Russ equals him, Mike Williams, all exclamation points. Thank you for the tip. We appreciate it. What a debut, right, Dave? And we'll talk about it when we get to pass catchers, but what a debut.
Were they going to throw him one? Are they at least going to throw him one pass? That's all they threw him. That's all they needed to.
Well, if it weren't for Calvin Austin being pulled off the field, he wouldn't have been on the field for that play.
Well, that's not what Tomlin said in his post-game press conference, but I don't know that I believe that's really was the case. We'll never know. Just like he said, we'll never know if they actually would have gone for it on fourth down there.
There's no way in hell they were going for that fourth down, by the way. Russell Wilson basically said that in his post-game press conference.
Okay, I didn't get to listen to Russell Wilson because I was doing the podcast for Brian.
He said, well, I'm not going to tell you what we were going to do, but, getting them to jump was a part of the plan. So that's I'm like, okay. Anyways, let's get Cass. Gives us $4.99. Says, welcome to the team, Mike Williams. Absolutely. Like I said, what a debut. What a debut.
Yes.
And I even said earlier in the game, we'll get to it when we get to pass catchers. I said, my gosh, can we throw like one of these jump balls to someone that's not Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin? Yeah. I'm sorry. I know he just got here, but Mike Williams, hey, go deep. Like, seriously, just run a go route. I felt like a kid in the backyard when we used to play pickup football saying, hey,
early.
Go deep.
I thought they would do it early to help open things up.
I agree with you, Dave.
But instead, they did it late to win the friggin' game. So I guess maybe I shouldn't argue with it.
Better late than never. Let's go to Justin Gall. Gives us $9.99. He said, what a great team win. It took everyone, even James Pierre. Jimmy Pierre had a rough game. We'll put it that way. We'll put it that way. Thank you for the tip.
Yeah, he did. But he honestly, he did fill in there in key moments on defense. But he had a lot to redeem himself with on that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean Manahan gives us $5. Says we're on to Baltimore.
Yes.
It's officially Baltimore Ravens hate week, whatever you want to call it. It's Baltimore week. So let's get geared up for that. But we got to talk about this one. There's a lot to unpack here. Tom Muir, Tom Plays Games, gives us $7, $1 per win. Had my blood pressure high for sure. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. I actually, for the first time in a long time, Dave, and I can't speak for you, when the Steelers had the ball, I felt like they were moving it in the second half. And I felt like in the first half when they struggled, especially in the second quarter, they just got away from the run. They weren't running the football anymore. And then they started kind of like, okay, we got to run the ball. This is not a good run defense. Let's run the ball. I actually thought, I shouldn't say I knew, I had a good feeling they were going to score to take the go-ahead 28-27 lead. My concern was with the defense. What say you?
Yeah, I was kind of the same way, but I mean, I was the same way. That I felt that the only way they were going to stop themselves on offense was if they stopped themselves yet again. The only way they were going to get stopped is if they stopped themselves again. Then the question was, and I couldn't help it. Normally we just talk about it. I had to send a message to my brother. I had to send him a text because I knew I was going to read about it in the knee-jerk reaction article of saying, well, if they just sit back and play soft zone and let them catch it in front of them, they're basically giving up the win.
Yeah,
I would prefer them just, I think I put this in the game day thread. I would prefer them just let them score a touchdown on the first play so you have enough time to go and score another one to win it. If you're just going to sit back and play the soft zone and let them get in field goal range, even though their field goal kicker was new, hadn't kicked in a couple years in an NFL game, I don't think, but I mean, he hit his kicks, even though one of them should have been from 15 yards further back. My goodness.
Yes.
That was ridiculous. That's yet another phase of the game that we have to continually bring up. Yeah, I feel you. I was like, I don't know if the defense is going to get this stop.
Right.
And they did.
They did. Thankfully, they did. Faceless Man gives us $7.02. You all can see the 7 and 2. He said Patrick Queen's best game, Joey Porter Jr.'s worst. Coaching, play calling, and personnel decisions wasn't great, but a win is a win. 7 and 2 playoff game next week. It's going to be a huge game. We don't want to jump the gun. Patrick Queen, definitely a fantastic game. He looked like he was a little banged up at the end there, rubbing his shoulder, arm, whatever. Joey Porter Jr. had a rough outing. He had a rough outing for sure. We'll talk about him. Coaching, play calling, personnel decisions. We'll break it down as we go. Thank you for the tip. We do appreciate it. Let's go to Jeff Coons, our buddy from up north. There you go.
What was the quote? The two ways to spell Jeff? The short way with the J and the stupid way with the G.
I always say there's the right way with the J and a wrong way with the G.
Oh, no.
He gave us 2 Canuck bucks and said, Coach T, when in doubt, punt the ball. # punter talk. Yeah, that's he's referring to the fake punt for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right, we have a couple more here. Let's go to Big Papa gives us $4.99. So Tomlin had great coaching decisions today. Hoping Highsmith is all right. 7 and 2 feels great. I think Mike Tomlin did make good decisions as a coach today, and he made some gutsy calls that a lot of people, a lot of coaches, you watch other NFL games, would not have made. There's a lot of coaches that wouldn't have gone for it on there was the 1 4th and down. Wasn't it on the final drive? Did they convert on 4th down? Jalen Warren, I believe, or that was the drive prior to. But he had some gutsy calls. That was the drive where Jalen Warren ended up fumbling, I believe.
Yes, but they went for it on 4th and 1, got 4 yards.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. There were two that I didn't like.
Okay.
I mean, you could say the punt. I don't think Tomlin called the punt in that situation. I think Tomlin in preparation gave them free reign to run the fake punt in any situation and didn't specifically say, no, not here. Yeah. That's how I think when he took ownership of it. Honestly, once again, he talked about it in his post-game press conference, which is good. When you have the chance to win the toss, you've got to defer. If nothing else, if you don't do the middle 8, if you don't win the middle 8 that they talk about, where you score to end the half, score to start the next half. If you don't win that, it's okay, but you can't afford to lose it, and that almost cost them this game.
I was surprised that they won the toss and took the ball. If they lose the toss and Commanders defer, you have no choice in the matter. But when you do have a choice, I don't know. Nicholas Gabriel gives us $5, says, I was at the game. Number 1, commies with their little towels, GTFO. If you know what that stands for, you understand. Number 2, he said, no more Najee tosses. And 3, shout out to all the Mike Williams haters. # here we go. Thank you, Nick, for the tip. We appreciate it. Cool that you were there at the game.
Can I ask you a question, Jeff?
Yeah.
Was the Steelers' second, 5th round pick worth the price of winning this game?
Hell yes, it was.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if Mike Williams does nothing else, was it just to win this game? Was that worth it for you?
If Mike Williams doesn't make a big play for the rest of the year, then he will always say, I had the winning touchdown in this week 10 game.
Yes.
And it won the game.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to Steeler fan 69 gives us $5. He said, I just had my photo taken with the group REM. That's me in the corner. Very good. He always likes to provide some humor and give us a tip in the process.
Got to give the dad jokes.
Absolutely. Always got to get the dad jokes. All right. We might see Brian Davis here show up. We might not. I don't know. He was probably getting kicked out of the stadium. So let's get started with the box score. So we always start on at quarterback. Russell Wilson, 14 of 28 for 195 yards, a 7-yard average, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was sacked 3 times, and the Washington defense had 6 quarterback hits. We'll talk about the pass protection shortly. But what do you think about Russ, Dave?
I felt he was pretty inaccurate today with his throws.
Yeah.
He had some very nice precision throws to George Pickens, like especially on more on the kind of I don't know if they were exactly slant routes. The one that was deep down the field, that was a nice one. Another one that was a 3rd down conversion where he hit him coming into the middle of the field. Both of those 2 plays. One was going to the one way, one was going the other way. Those were his best throws. He had some off-target throws. Like, I mean, my goodness, I loved the design. And if you see it, it was going to work. Them running that screenplay to Mount Washington. And Russ guns the ball away from his body.
Yeah.
I think they could have got some significant yards there. He wasn't as accurate. And now the long interception, as many people refer to it, that's an arm punt. It really wasn't. There was no harm.
Thankfully, Pickens touched him down.
As long as Pickens touches him down, that's not a bad, a bad place. And that's his first interception with the Steelers. So in all, I liked most of his decision making. Let's just say this: he held the ball too long at times as well. But I would rather hold the ball too long and take a sack than force something that's not there and throw an interception. And I obviously couldn't see if that's exactly what was going on. There'll be plenty of others that break down that tape in the All-22 and say if that's really what happened or not. So for now, everyone can form their own opinion. Would I prefer him more than anything to throw it away and play to live another day? I would. So some of those was Russ holding onto the ball too long. But I noticed on some replays, it seemed like the receivers – they were doing a pretty good job being covered a lot of the time. So definitely of the 3, not Russell Wilson's best game, but he's still out there doing what he needs to do to lead the team to victory.
Russell Wilson in his post-game press conference did talk about the wind. I did not notice that it was, but you saw as the game progressed, just by watching the field goal post, the flags at the top, that started to get windy. And he mentioned that the wind was tough. It also was weird how some of the receivers, and we'll talk about this when we get to the receivers, it was odd how they weren't locating the ball well. They were looking over the wrong shoulder at times, and maybe that was inaccuracy by the quarterback. Maybe that was just an odd design. I mean, the Darnell Washington pass, not the screen, the other one where he's running across the middle and the ball, I mean, if he's looking, it almost hits him in the head. It's just Darnell Washington wasn't expecting it, or just wasn't even an option on the play. It's just really odd stuff happened in this game. I thought Russell Wilson, though, improved in one area that mattered the most, and that was the red zone. That was the biggest issue last week, because they went 2 weeks ago, 0 against the Giants on Monday Night Football in Week 8. They go 3 for 4 and probably would have been 4 for 4 in this game if Jaylen Warren doesn't fumble at the 1-yard line. So Russell Wilson, 3 touchdowns. I told Dave this. I saw it on Twitter. I'm not going to take credit for it. The last time a quarterback threw for 3 touchdowns was Ben Roethlisberger in 2021. So it's been a while. It has been a while since that happened. Well, we did have Brian Davis here shortly, but he just popped out. So that's fine. We're going to go to a super chat.
You were just ready to bring him up, and there he's gone.
Yeah. Eamon J. Singh gives us $1.99. Said, here's to 3-0 against the state of Maryland. Yeah, you got 1. Got 2 more coming. That's going to be tough. Tyler W. gives us $5. Is the new floor on offense is 28 points with Russ. That is huge for the defense and special teams. They can make them aggressive. That's why Pittsburgh is a contender. I think that the floor being 28 is fair. Dave, you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And remember, this was a pretty good defense they were going against. Not again. They weren't ranked high against the run, but I think they were improving. If I'd have to go back and look at their trends again, but not a bad unit. I mean, especially think about it. Their head coach is a defensive coach, things of that nature. But yeah, I think the offense. This is what they can do. This is what they can bring us. And didn't have to call on Boz to knock any field goals through.
No, it's crazy. And the Steelers, the Commanders' defense was not a top-tier defense by any metric. When you look at the numbers, they came out and they were ready to go. That was a good defensive performance, and I think we've all seen it before where teams can rise up and play up a notch. I felt like that happened for Washington. So let's go to the pass catchers since we've already talked about a couple, and that is George Pickens leading the way. 5 catches on 7 targets for 91 yards, a beautiful toe-tapping 34-yard catch along the sideline. He did have a touchdown and an average of 18.2. Mike Williams, 1 catch, 1 target, 32 yards, 1 touchdown. Jalen Warren, 2 for 29 on 2 targets. Calvin Austin, 2 for 20. Pat Freiermuth, 3 for 17. Darnell Washington, 1 for 6, and a bunch of others that did not have the reception but were targeted. Michael Pruitt, Van Jefferson, and our buddy Jimmy Pierre. So what did you think? What did you think about the pass catchers, Dave?
I don't know if it was Russ. I don't know if it was the pass catchers, but they didn't seem in sync nearly as much. Maybe it was, maybe we'll say it's the bye week, it's coming off of that. Let's hope that's what it was. There was just something that wasn't quite there, whether it was the wind, whatnot. They weren't completely in sync, but they managed to get the win. That's the thing. You're like, wow, they just weren't on the same page a lot. If the Steelers ended up losing this game, that's one of the big things we would have been talking about, was how their balls, whether they're looking over the wrong shoulder or Russ is throwing it over the wrong shoulder. I'm not going to judge which one was which, but they just weren't as connected as they were the last 2 games, but hopefully this is just the one-off of that.
Yeah, and Darnell Washington, he's getting more targets, but I'm curious, like, why aren't some of those plays being designed for Pat Freiermuth? Like, you talk about the tight end screen. I know that some of it is kind of like we're trying to surprise the opposition. No one's expecting a tight end screen to Darnell Washington. Pat Freiermuth does have a touchdown in this game, which is fantastic, but he still is not as big a part of the offense as I would want. The one catch by the Mike Williams is tantalizing when you think about what could happen in the future and what this could do to the offense, but I don't want to jump the gun just yet. So, all right, let's bring in Brian Davis, who's with us remote. He is there. I guess if you're watching it, can't see anything. Brian, you with us?
I do not think he is.
All right. Well, we'll see if he can reconnect. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Let's talk about the running game now, Dave. The Steelers rushed for 140 yards. 140 yards. And what was crazy is when you look at it, you're thinking someone had to go over 100, right? Was it Najee Harris's 4th 100 game? No. He only rushed for 53 yards on 21 carries. Now, Jalen Warren, 66 yards, 14 carries, a 4.7 average. He did have a fumble. Cordero Patterson, 3 for 14. And man, did I want him to convert on that 3rd down to not have to punt the ball back to Washington. But he just came up just shy. George Pickens has 1 carry for 4 yards. Russell Wilson gets 4 for 3.
I'm trying to remember that play. Is that did they Pickens? Call the one quick pass to George Pickens? Did they call that a lateral?
They must have called it a lateral. That's the only thing. Yeah.
I would not be shocked if they changed that.
I agree.
But for now, that's
which which is pretty crazy. If that turns into a forward pass, that moves Russell Wilson just under. I would move him to 199. I thought that would put him over 200, but no, it wouldn't in terms of passing yards. So what did you think about?
You said 225 in your parlay.
I know.
The first one I've missed. But
anyways, I missed
those things are a side note. The thing that's important is the Steelers win the game. So
that's right.
Running the ball.
What did you?
They ran it 43 times. Well, let's just say this. Let's take away the George Pickens one, and let's take away the two kneel downs. So then they ran it 40 times. All right. It was just over 3.3 yards. But what did they really do when they got the ball, even when they fumbled it at the 1, and then they got the ball back again? The reason you're saying, there was a lot of time still, but there was enough time that they could keep running the ball, and they really controlled the game more on the ground in the fourth quarter. Once again, out of those plays, I don't know, that George Pickens one is just still really weird, because according to this, they say it happened in the fourth quarter. I don't remember that. But the Steelers in all ran for 57 yards in the fourth quarter. That's where I think you really want to see things. And by doing so, Russell Wilson was only 5 of 7 for 87 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. But my goodness, he had 153.0 rating in the fourth quarter, because the Steelers were still leaning on the run in order to finish things off, even though they weren't winning the game.
You said 57. Was that the number you said?
Yeah, unless the Steelers media website is, sometimes it gets a little wonky right after the game. But when I clicked on the fourth quarter, it's 57 yards.
Even if it's not exact, the fact that the Steelers down a score said, we trust our running game enough that we're still going to run the football. I mean, we've seen this in the past, even dating back to Ben Roethlisberger's time with the Steelers, where they would just get pass happy. And it's almost thinking like, well, we got to throw it. We got to throw it to get back in it. They continued to run the football in the fourth quarter. Good for them. Good for this team. I thought the running game, this wasn't a performance like you saw against the Chargers where they just ran it down their throat. And Najee Harris didn't have the best game of his career, but still they did enough to win the game. Let's bring in Brian Davis. It seems like he's moving now. Brian, welcome. What's up? Can't hear you, Brian.
We have no audio coming from Brian.
No, nothing.
Now he's muted.
Still nothing.
Yep. So, but at least I'm trying to see I'm trying to see what jersey he's at least got on.
I don't know.
So yeah,
can't hear him at all.
That's a Najee Harris jersey.
Yeah, it looks like a Najee. So, all right, Brian. Thanks for joining the show, man. We'll talk to you later. Okay, we're gonna move on. Let's go to the offensive line, because this is something I really want to talk with you about, Dave, because you are an offensive line guru. So I mentioned that Russell Wilson, 3 sacks, 23 yards. You brought up how you felt he held onto the ball too long, and I agree with you on certain occasions. The defense for the Washington Commanders had 6 quarterback hits, but it felt like he was under duress. That is obviously Russell Wilson. What did you think about the offensive line? Let's start with pass pro.
There was times where it was getting the job done, and there was other times where it was not. What's interesting is some of the times when Russell Wilson had the least amount of time is when he threw the ball, where they brought extra pressure and he took the deep shots. So that's interesting. But then there was other times where he felt like he could hold the ball, and then he did end up giving up a sack because he held it so long. So in all, I mean, I'd have to go back and watch more. That I think what might have been causing these things is Washington did send pressure a lot. They did blitz, and they did do certain things with that. But I mean, in all, think about it. You say 3 sacks is a lot, but at the same time, 3 sacks isn't a ton. That's like 1 per quarter, but it can also kill a drive. And I'm pretty sure at least one of those did not. So I'm not going to say I'm definitely not saying the pass protection was great, But I'm also not ready to just say, "Oh, it was just terrible," and they need to. I'm not going that route either. Let's just say it. It needs to be examined a little bit deeper to see what their problems are.
Right. And this is a good question here from Crystal Privet. Gives us $2. She said, "When can 77 talking about Broderick Jones see the bench? McCollum should start." Now, I didn't think that Broderick Jones had a great game, and I don't think he's had many great games this season.
No.
But if they were going to replace him, I don't think it would be Ryan McCollum.
No,
I would think it would be Dylan Cook, who is
Dylan Cook is on the practice squad.
Right. So it would have to be like, we're going to elevate him. I don't even know who
Anderson.
Who's that? Spencer Anderson?
No, Calvin Anderson.
Oh, that's right.
That's who came in for Broderick Jones for one play.
That's right.
He's also the one that came in for Dan Moore one play the previous game and gave up
a sack. Yeah. So I don't know if there's an answer, unfortunately. I guess you just have to pray to the healing waters that Troy Falatanu and the Steelers have a long playoff run and he can come back. I don't know. That was actually tossed out there when Falatanu was placed on IR that he could return eventually, but it wouldn't be until the postseasons. I don't know. Have no idea. Let's hit this from Tyler W. Gives us $5. Said, if you can run it inside the 10-yard line and in the fourth quarter with the game on the line, you have an identity. Give the O-line credit for that. Yeah, I will. I will give the offensive line credit for opening up holes. I don't think the holes were there as much as they were the past few games. Najee Harris didn't really have a lot of those gaping holes that he had prior to that, but nonetheless, we shall see. Justin Gall gives us $9.99. Said, coaching decisions, fake punt, A+, allowing returns on the kickoffs, F. We'll talk about this for sure when we get to the special teams, and I'm sure we'll talk about the fake punt during that time as well. So thank you for the tip for sure. All right, Dave, anything else on the offensive side of the ball you wanted to touch on, like play calling or anything like that?
As you know what? I'm good. I think I'm good. What's interesting is that it feels like the Steelers should have even had another touchdown in this game.
Yeah.
So then you're talking about 35 points. I mean, they should have been first and goal at the 1. It's frustrating that was Jaylen Warren still fighting forward? Yes. Does he need to make sure he secures that ball better? Yes. Was he being pushed sideways or at the time? Yes. Have the running backs this season for the Steelers been whistled sooner, even when they were moving forward? Yes. So it can be all those things. It can be all those things. But in that case, he was, even though the official, whichever guy is it there on CBS, Gene Steratore, whoever it was, said he believed that should have been blown dead and should not have been a fumble. That hurts if you end up losing that game. But you know what? The Steelers left those 7 points on the field, but then they replaced them with 7 more. They still got the job done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gene's from Washington, PA. He's a homer. So we'll keep Gene's territory, that is.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think that I've been pretty happy with Arthur Smith. I want to say this. I want to talk about this briefly. That we've had 9 games, and now we've had 3 games with Russell Wilson at quarterback, because I don't think the play calling for Justin Fields is the same as the play calling for Russell Wilson. And I've been pleasantly surprised, especially in this game. There were a lot of times where you were seeing second and long and you're thinking, oh, great, here we go again. So here comes the second and long run. And they mixed it up a little bit. They did get into some run pass, which I hate. That's always been a beef of mine going back to the Randy Fietner days, Randyland. But real quick, Dave, have you been happy so far with Arthur Smith?
I have, because, I mean, there are times where you can say, yeah, I guess the other team kind of knows where it's coming. Not a big fan of the constant toss plays, but they are getting better. I think the Steelers are getting better at blocking them. Not that they were great in this game, but they weren't as awfully bad. I don't know why. It's just maybe it's setting up something else that he does. Maybe if they take him out of the arsenal, things don't go as well. So I don't want to complain, because my goodness, we're talking about the Steelers. I mean, how many points have they scored over the last 3 games?
Over the last 3 games?
I mean, even you can go the last 4 with the last one with Fields as well.
So let's do this. The 4-game winning streak. Let's talk about the 4-game winning streak. So the Raiders, they put up 32. The Jets, they put up 37.
Yep.
The Giants, they put up 26.
Yep.
And then the Commanders, they put up 28.
So I'm saying +9 -6. So they're averaging over 30 points
in the
over
last
the
four
last
games.
4 games.
In their 4-game winning streak. Yeah.
And people are, I mean, I know there's people in here and there's someone who always likes to critique what Russell Wilson, say how terrible he is in the live chat, but at the same, I'm not saying that he's terrible. And you're not saying he's the best quarterback in the NFL, but my goodness, you are getting better quarterback play than what the Steelers have seen since probably 2018.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I'll tell you what I want to do is I want to take a break, and then I want to come back. We'll talk about the defense. I want to bring up one of our contributors at Steel Curtain, Big G, Sean Gurley, his message here, and see what you think about that. But we'll be right back. For those watching live on any platform, we're not going anywhere. For those on the audio side, we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. All right, Steeler fans, we are back. Thank you all for hanging in there. It's a post-game show. Steelers win 7-2. Should be excited. I said I wanted to bring this up. This is not a super chat, but I want to bring up Big G, Sean Gurley. He said, I don't normally blame the refs, but this game was called horribly. The fumble by Warren, Dave, you talked about that. The holding call against Watt in the end zone, that was atrocious. I stood up off my couch and was screaming, that's a hold. That not called. The phantom,
and that was not one of those rip move things that you can get away with stuff. It was not.
No, it was. The phantom holding call on Dante Jackson, which negated what was that? What was the call that went against us? It ended up being a redo the down.
Yeah, it was an offensive holding call against the Commanders.
Yes.
And then they're getting ready to do it, and they're like, oh, wait, we have another flag that we dropped.
Defensive holding, yeah. Or you could throw in Zach Frazier's hold. Which
they never showed a replay of that.
There's a reason why, Dave, because it never happened. That thing was so late. That flag came in like 10 seconds late. And then the no call for PI on Pickens. Dave, what did you think about the officiating in this game? We'll get this out of the way.
That's been the officiating. That's been the officiating all season. I mean, honestly, at least they're consistently bad. I mean, I'll address the elephant in the room. If they would have marked that a first down on that 4th down play, would you have had an argument against it?
What my honest opinion.
I mean, that was a tough call.
Honest to God opinion, Dave, is this. Whatever they called on the field was not getting overturned. There was not enough visual evidence to overturn it. So if they would have called it a first down and they're like, we're going to look at it in the booth, I don't think they overturn it. It was called short. I thought it was a good spot. I honestly do think that was a good spot. And people that want to freak out about the orange line, which is not real, and they want to freak out, excuse me, they also want to freak out about that the TV angle is not an exact line down the line to gain. And so you can't look at an angled camera angle and say, well, look at there. So I thought there was a good spot. You agree, Dave?
I thought it was fairly accurate, but my goodness, I don't know how this is where you're right. There's a friggin' chip in the ball. They measure the rotation speed. They could totally fix this problem. You would know where the ball was because all you would have to do is do an official timestamp of when his knee was down and he was touched. Where is the ball at that time? You can even tell, but based on the length of the ball, which way it's oriented with that chip. You would be able to tell if it exactly got there or not. Okay, you have the power.
Didn't they do this in the preseason?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, like I've always said it, tennis, the ball is moving at a ridiculous speed, and they can say challenge, and it looks, and you see the ball in, out, boom, let's move on with life. How did they not do this? Or I don't know.
But honestly, I still think the worst officiating call of the day. I mean, some people didn't like how they were roughing up Calvin Austin on that one deep ball. It was a little bit overthrown anyway, but he might have been able to get underneath it. Had to be the non-call of the face mask on the field goal.
Was that a face mask or just a hold?
Oh, no. They grabbed his face mask and turned his head.
Oh, okay.
He reached back
his head
and grabbed his face mask and turned it. And the officials right there, they said, well, the official must have deemed that the ball was already weighed. It wouldn't have affected him. It doesn't matter. Throw the friggin' flag. That would have, I mean, my goodness, that was a 41-yard field goal, I think. I mean, that turns into a 56-yarder.
Absolutely.
I got to check that. It might have been even a little bit shorter, and it turned it into more. But it was going to make it a really long field goal. It was. and they just didn't throw it. That one was pretty bad too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about the defense, David. Let's start with Jaden Daniels' stat line. He throws 17. It goes 17 of 34. Obviously, 50% completion, 202 yards, 5.9 average. Did not throw a touchdown. Did not throw an interception. Was sacked 3 times for 20 yards. Had a 68.5 rating, and his rushing ability, 3 carries for 5 yards. Let's talk about this, because this was like the game where if you take 2 drives out of the equation, this is your typical Steelers, what they do to rookie quarterbacks game. I thought the game plan was good. And honestly, I don't know. I thought that they had a good game plan in this game against Jaden Daniels. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the fact that they held him to as many yards rushing as Russell Wilson had before he took 2 knees to end the game.
Yeah.
They were equal in rushes, and Russell Wilson's was on 1 less carry. So, I mean, the one that he lost a yard, it could have been a Larry Ogunjobi sack because he came up and acted like he was going to throw a screen pass, but the offensive linemen were never really blocking like it was going to be a pass play. So that's why they probably counted as a run play and not a sack. It might have been I said Ogunjobi. It might have been Benton. I think it was Keanu Benton, and then get him for a 1-yard loss.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a sack or not, it was still a nice play. They did not let Washington get into that part of the game. End of story. Made a huge difference in a lot of things. Now, did it mean that they gave up some other things? Yes, it did. You know, I mean, my goodness, Terry McLaurin went off.
Yep.
Maybe I'm not saying there's one difference versus the other, but bottom line is anytime you want to focus on something more, you've got to give it from somewhere else. I don't know for sure that that's where it was, but you just have to realize that is how things work. But taking that aspect out of the game, I thought was a really good job.
I thought it was phenomenal. I thought that the Steelers showed discipline. The Steelers showed that they are very comfortable going up against a mobile quarterback. They see one twice a year in Lamar Jackson, although Mike Tomlin made sure to tell everyone, let's cool it on the comparisons to Lamar Jackson when talking about Jaden Daniels. And that's
always Coach Tomlin talking up the next
absolutely.
opponent. He doesn't want to give them the bulletin board material, and I don't blame him there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I thought that the Steelers did a great job. And again, Terry McLaurin, who I think is the most underrated receiver in the National Football League. No one talks about Terry, or Scary Terry, as they call him in the Washington fan base. No one talks about Terry McLaurin as a top 10 guy, and he's legit. I've liked him since he played at Ohio State, and I don't even like Ohio State. I don't care for college football. He's the guy that when everyone's like, oh, the Steelers should trade for a receiver, I'm like, can we just trade for him? Just give me Terry McLaurin because he's that good. But still, let's talk about the other end of the spectrum there, Dave, and that is the receiving.
Can I bring up one more thing?
Sure.
Because I wanted to look it up first to see.
Go for it.
You said we talked about the passing as a whole?
We haven't gone to the receivers yet. We haven't gone to the receivers
yet. But with Jaden Daniels, he was 17 of 34. That is his lowest completion percentage of the season.
Yeah.
All right. Week 1, wait, I'm going the wrong way. Week 1, 70.8. I'm going in order. 79.3, 91.3, 86.7. He did against Cleveland only have 56, but that was what it was. 68.6 against Baltimore. Against Carolina, that was a game that he didn't play. He was 100%, but he was only 2 for 2. Chicago was his other lowest, 55.3, 68.2. Steelers held him to 50. Okay, so not only did they keep him from running, I mean, look at these rushing totals. I'll start with week 1. Just going on 88, 44, 39, 47, 82, 22, 50, 52, 35. The Steelers held him to 50% completion percentage and only 5 rushing yards. By far the lowest of both of those in his very short NFL career.
Yeah. So let's talk about then the pass catchers for the Washington Commanders, because we mentioned Terry McLaurin. He does go off. 5 catches, 113 yards on 6 targets. Someone said in the live chat that he was in Joey Porter Jr.'s head, and I would say that's accurate. Noah Brown.
No.
No.
I think Joey Porter Jr. was in Joey Porter Jr.'s head.
Yeah, well, he lives rent free.
And of course, Terry McLaurin did help with that. But the penalties and everything, that was, I mean, my goodness, that was half of the Commanders' offense in the first half.
True. Noah Brown had 3 catches for 33 yards. Zach Ertz, 4 for 31. Luke McCaffrey, 1 for 23. Zacchaeus, who had a rough game, he's the one that muffed the punt that the Steelers recovered. Ben Skoranek, welcome back. Austin Eckler, 1 for 7. And De'Ami Brown, 2 for minus 13 yards. Gotta love that stat line. That was the weird play where they tried the throwback. They were going to try and throw it back to Jaden Daniels. It didn't work out. Dave, what did you think about the defensive secondary? And we talked about Joey Porter a little bit, but Dante Jackson leaves the game with a hamstring injury, is unable to return. He's going to be evaluated. You didn't see Cam Sutton slide over there. You saw James Pierre stepping in and being the outside corner. I'm not sure what was up with that. What was your take on the secondary?
Well, first of all, James Pierre going to the outside rather than Cam Sutton, I think that was just as much as it of how long that he's been around, how long he's been back as anything.
Yeah. Now,
I'd also like to see, was James Pierre out there when Cam Sutton was on the sideline, or was Cam Sutton out there doing his, because he was playing a lot sometime in nickel and in dime and in all that stuff. Was that what it was? And I don't think the Steelers were in the situation with just 2 weeks in with Cam Sutton, one of them being the bye week, where the players get an extended time off, that they were ready to do the Cam Sutton plays on the outside, but then in some sub packages goes inside. I don't think they were ready for that. So it probably was a wise move. Now, if something with Dante Jackson, if something with him is where he's not going to be available this week, then you could maybe get Sutton ready to do that if that's what you choose to do. But in all, I think there was times where they really struggled in the secondary. I think the plan was to keep Joey Porter Jr. with On McClair and more, and I think they stepped away from that to start the second half because of all the penalties and stuff. And that opening drive, that showed that didn't work. So then later on, it seemed like he was back. I don't know if it was a matchup thing. I don't know if they always wanted Porter to on the side with the single receiver so they could give more help other places. I don't have time to break that down in game, but I would just say from the secondary perspective, it was not their strongest performance. And I'm going to ask you this: what did you think about Minkah Fitzpatrick in this game?
That was what I was going to ask you. I
didn't know what to say. That's why I want to ask you first.
Well, I often ask myself, why is Minkah not getting the opportunities that he had so often and early in his time in Pittsburgh? And I just don't buy the excuse that a lot of people say, well, they're not throwing his way. I watch every snap of every game, and it sure as hell looks like his area, if you want to call it that, for the defensive secondary, is being targeted. And I don't know if it's him going to help, because I do know he is the quarterback of the secondary. And there were times, especially early in the season, where you could tell he was going out of his way to help a Beanie Bishop. Okay, yeah. Beanie Bishop's got a tough matchup here. Maybe it's Devontae Adams. I'm shading his way. I don't know. And I go back to like 2019, 2020, when he was just, he was just picking everything off with insight. It's like, well, what has changed? Is the Steelers secondary that much weaker that he has to go and help everyone else? Are they asking him to do different things? I feel like this year, more than any year, he is that center field type player that he wasn't in those years where, he's having to go in and lead the team in tackles. We all remember those years. I don't know. I don't think that he's playing poorly. He's just not coming close to splash plays. And I don't know why. I honest to God don't.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it on our game day thread. Some people were really complaining about him there at steelcurrentnetwork.com. And I'm like, I don't know that it's that bad. I will tell you this. You say they are throwing his way. They are not throwing passes in the close proximity of Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
It appears to be. Now, does not mean that they don't throw passes where Minka is help over the top and he's the one that can come up and make a play. They aren't throwing passes where Minka Fitzpatrick could get his hands on them. It's not like they're throwing a ball. Minka's the guy that's there in coverage, but the guy's got to step on him or going to fight it away. Because if the ball's going to be close enough that Minka can get there, he can. I think that's what they're doing. It's not that they're they're avoiding his zone altogether. They're staying on the fringe of it, if that makes more sense to that. Because I think if you're going to challenge a 50-50 ball to Minka Fitzpatrick, it's not going to work out well for the offense. That's not something that stood out that I've really seen this year. But I think Minka Fitzpatrick is just so good at what he does. He can be called on to cover what the rest of the secondary isn't strong at. And sometimes that sets him up to make splash plays, and sometimes it doesn't.
Do you think, Dave, that he's not taking the risks that he used to? That if it was a chance where it's like, okay, I'm going to take a risk here. The reward is a pick six. The risk is, well, they double move me. We saw this happen against the Chargers, I believe. Justin Herbert threw a beautiful pass. Do you think that might be it?
I think a little bit, yeah. What I think goes on is, what did Troy Polamalu need in order to take the risks that he took?
Ryan Clark to cover the back end?
Yes. And yes, Deshaun Elliott's doing a nice job, but is he the guy that's really going to cover the back end? He's a little bit different type of player in my mind. So it might be that Minka can't take as many opportunities just because he doesn't have that. I'm not a secondary person at all. I would love to know Coach KT Smith's take on this for sure. So I'm not going to pretend to talk and have definitive answers about something that I don't know.
Yeah, those are good questions. I want to get this up here. Ant Smith, $4.99. He said Mike Williams scores game-winning touchdown, and P. Smith had 1 sack and 3 tackles. Immediate production. Oh, Preston Smith. I'm sorry. I'm just not used to seeing that. Did he have a sack? I didn't think Preston
he did. He did. I'm trying to remember. I mean, he does statistically. I'm trying to remember the play in my mind.
Preston Smith there. I'll be darned. I did not know that. Okay, cool. Did Keanu Benton get credit with a half, or did they give that all to Cam?
They gave it all to Cam.
Okay. So, yeah. Hey, the new guys.
That was going to be a sack whether Keanu Benton was there or not.
True. You're right.
Cam was getting that done. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go to the run defense. That's the last thing we need to talk about on the defensive side of the ball. Austin Eckler has 44 yards on 13 carries. He does score 2 touchdowns. Jeremy McNichols has a touchdown himself for 4 carries on 7 yards. Let me just phrase this for everyone out there sees it, because everyone was freaking out after the last time the Steelers were on the field against the Giants and gave up 140 yards. They held the Washington rushing team rushing to 22 carries, 60 yards, 2.7 average. Yes, there were 3 rushing touchdowns, but it was 60
They were all 1 yard.
They
were all 1 yard touchdowns.
So that 90-yard average the Steelers had going into week 10 is going to drop significantly going into week 11, and they need it. They need their run defense to make teams one-dimensional, especially next week against the Baltimore Ravens. What did you think about the run defense, Dave?
I thought they did a very nice job. I think they had 1 double-digit run in the game, 1 10-yard run.
Wow.
And that's it. Yes, they gave up 3 rushing touchdowns, but like I said, they were all 1-yard touchdowns. That's going to be a tough ask to do those kind of things. I think they had some nice negative plays, especially early on with Patrick Queen. The big thing is you're holding them to under 3 yards a carry. I mean, 2.7. And when you have a quarterback that had been getting a bunch of rushing yards and did not, in all, you have to admit that the run defense here was really top notch.
It is. And again, I think that we said this on the really late after Monday Night Football post-game show, was that, and we also echoed it. Everyone did, myself, Dave, on your shows throughout the week. It felt like it was just a fan knee-jerk reaction to say that, the run defense is this huge issue. When statistically, when you looked at it, it's not. It hasn't been an issue. Hasn't been an issue all year. And so I thought this was a really good display, and they got to the point where the Commanders, even with 3 timeouts, felt that they had to throw the ball to move it, and that's a good place to be. And I thought that, hey, kudos to a couple players. Patrick Queen, someone said it earlier in our super chats. I thought this was his best game as a Steeler yet.
And he was gutting it out at the end, like you said.
Yes,
you're right.
He was knifing through the line, tackles for losses. He got credited with 2 tackle for losses. Preston Smith got credited for 2 tackle for losses. Deshaun Elliott had a tackle for loss. Larry Ogunjobi blew up a play. Cam Hayward had 2 tackle for losses. The Steelers had 8 tackles for losses in this contest. They were making it very obvious that if the Commanders were going to win, it was going to be through the air. And then mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Dave, anything to add?
Yeah, and they also had 3 passes defensed on the front of the line, on that defensive line, meaning batting them down at the line of scrimmage.
Great point.
One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. Let's look at the yards surrendered by the Steelers on the ground over the last 4 games. 57, 54, 157, 60. It was a one-off game against the Giants, the way I look at it, when they were focusing more on something else. So I'm not concerned about the Steelers' run defense.
No, I'm not. And, Landon Roberts, the inside linebackers have been playing good football. I know that was your X factor, Dave. I thought they played well again today. And so kudos to them. Let's get this super chat here. Heath Davis gives us $5. Said El Jefe, 3 for Russ and 2 for me to say Dan Quinn looks like an in-shape Andy Reid. Thank you, Heath, for the tip. We do appreciate it. All right, Dave, we have to talk about special teams. And I want to talk about the fake punt here in a second. But before we do that, is anyone else out there just absolutely livid at the point of why are the Steelers giving up return yards? If you have a kicker that can kick it out of the end zone and a touchback is at the 30, now that last drive, I was really pissed. I was like, oh my gosh, why are you not kicking out of the end zone? And someone on Twitter was like, well, they did burn off some clock and they only gained 5 extra yards. I'm like, 5 extra yards could be the difference between a game-winning field goal and a not game-winning field goal. I don't know. What did you think about that approach? Because they did that the entire game.
Yeah,
that wasn't
especially because it seemed like Eckler was getting the ball and getting it upfield fast.
Yes.
I don't know that Cordell Patterson is 100%. He looked kind of slow back there returning it, didn't he? It just seemed like it wasn't
very slow.
It just didn't seem like it was the same. It seemed like he was getting to the 15 before there's a bunch of people around him when Eckler was getting to the 25.
Yeah.
We could talk about the wind. But the problem with the wind is the wind isn't knocking the ball down in both the third quarter and the fourth quarter because you change directions.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Maybe the last one they couldn't. I thought for sure after they took the 1-point lead, put it out of the back of the friggin' end zone, and they didn't because, I mean, my goodness, that was a risk that I was not willing to take because, especially since the one before Washington returned it out to past the 40. So that one was a little sketchy in my book as well.
All right, let's talk about the fake punt. The Steelers definitely, and we talked about this a little bit at the top of the show. They had the green light to run this fake punt. They do it. It should have worked. And if it's completed, and if Miles Killebrews' pass to James Pierre is completed, we are celebrating this and lauding it and saying, what a gutsy call.
And we might be talking about a 35-20 game instead.
Yeah. The one thing I always say, because gutsy calls is a term that we all use a lot. Gutsy call is just another term for a risky call. And when you have a risk, there is risk involved. The risk involved is that your defensive back, which plays defense for a reason, doesn't catch the ball or the throw because he's a safety, is not a quarterback, doesn't complete the pass. That is the risk involved. Dave, do you think the reward was worth the risk is my question.
Oh, that's a great question. Here's how I would have done that as a coach. They saw something that sometimes Washington think it might be because it was a longer distance that they're like, hey, we're going to sneak an extra guy in here to try to block it, because are they really going to try to throw for it on a, what was it, 4th and 16, something like that?
Something like that.
It was a longer one. So maybe that's something they were going to do, and that's something maybe that the Steelers saw. But to me, I would be like, hey, we're going to run this anytime they show it to us from the 25-yard line and out. Maybe that's the way. You have the green light to run it anytime if we are outside our own 25-yard line.
Right.
They were at their own 16. That's tough to swallow. But once again, all he has to do is catch the ball and fall down right there, and it's first down.
Right.
And it's not like it. And yeah, you have a defensive back throwing it to a defensive back, but the throw was there. He just has to make the catch. It wasn't like they were trying some huge risky trickeration play. It was, oh, you're not going to guard this guy? We're going to throw it to him. I mean, my goodness, a part of me wishes like they would have thrown it to him sooner and just let him run. But then he had to catch and run. At least you're throwing it to the sticks. So right. I'm not going to knock it, because, I mean, that was a mistake on the part of Washington that the Steelers didn't use against them and made it their own bigger mistake by lack of execution.
Yeah. I mean, it's what it comes down to is just risk reward. Like I said, if he makes that catch, he probably has room to run, by the way. I don't know if there's anyone within like a 15-yard radius of him. So he probably catches it and is running for a distance, but yeah, it's deep in your own end. It's tough to justify. And I swear, and I'll say this, and I'll die on this hill for the rest of the week. And that is, the whole tenor of the game changed at that point.
Yes.
They didn't
have a first down.
No, they were doing nothing. So, okay, the Steelers have to punt. Okay, the defense is just annihilating them every time they go out there. And then the moment that happened, they start the possession in the red zone, touchdown 7-7, and everything changes.
Now,
everything changes.
Here's the one thing that I do want to say about that. Would I have run it that deep in my own zone? No.
I wouldn't need it.
Did the Steelers show how punting the ball could actually give them the ball and field position? Yes, when they recovered that one. But the bigger thing is, I do not give the defensive pass. I do not give them a pass on that. When you make a gutsy call like that and it doesn't work out, part of the reason that you're making it is that you say, hey, defense, if we don't get this, we are surrendering 3 points. You've got to keep it to 3. So, yes, they were put in a tough spot, but man, would I've loved to have seen the defense really dig down and say, you know what? We went for it. Special teams, you've been bailing us out a lot this year. We've got your back. This is going to be no more than 3 points. And it didn't happen.
Yeah, you're right. And the Steelers' red zone defense did not have a great game. Their third down defense was phenomenal. They held on third down the Commanders 5 for 14 on the day. And then red zone, they were 3 for 3. Washington was 3 for 3. So the bend don't break mentality was not in effect for the Steelers in this Week 10 game. But you win.
And I was ready for it to come on that last drive when a field goal loses the game. I was prepared for it. And thank goodness they didn't. They brought pressure. They still was doing what they needed to do.
Yeah. All right. Dave, anything else you want to add before we go to final thoughts?
Yeah, one thing you said about the red zone. Yeah, Washington was 3 for 3.
Yes.
But at the same time, how many drives did they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They had 11 drives that reached the red zone 3 times. As Coach Tomlin pointed out in the post-game press conference, they were reaching the red zone on 47% of their drives.
Yeah.
Now, they were settling for a lot of field goals. Like, my goodness, that game against the Giants when they won was with 21 points, won 7 field goals. But they were getting there a lot. The Steelers did keep them out of the red zone way more than they had been getting there. Unfortunately, they gave up touchdowns every time that they did.
And honestly, they've had how many fourth down conversions fail on the year, Dave?
What, That was the first time.
That was the first time. The Zach Ertz so close, inches away. That was their first failed fourth down conversion on the season. So some pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to say, everyone, if you like these type of nuggets and tidbits, go check out Dave's article tomorrow, which will run after the winners and losers, typically around 11 a.m. Eastern time. That is just breaking down the game by the numbers. So go check that out for sure. It's always a fun read. Okay. It's a big win. 28-27. Dave, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts are, didn't matter if it was 1 point, didn't matter if it was 31 points. They beat a team that had more wins than them coming into this game. Now, you can talk about who watched it and played, everything else. And you did it by going into their stadium, despite there being more gold towels than burgundy towels. And even, they even handed them out to try to outnumber the gold ones.
Wasn't even
just
close.
Doesn't work. I'll be honest with you. I saw videos of, they have to give them to all fans.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're wearing Steelers. I wonder if some Steeler fans took them through in the trash. To me, if I'm a Steeler fan, I'm taking that towel. I'm keeping that. And that's my reminder of being at that game. You see that? That's when they tried to give out these little burgundy towels and it didn't do anything for them.
No.
So now it's on to a big one next week. I know we'll turn into that one a lot, but I want to say something because I won't be on the post-game show next week unless I actually have volume, unlike Brian did, because I will be there at Acrisure Stadium. I'll be, and no, I'm not second level, Jeff, like you said. I'm first level. I'm section 122, section 122 row Q. There's even a possibility that in the same section, like one row off on the other, closer to the other aisle, this might be a Daniel J game as well.
Oh,
so if you're going to the game this week, hit me up on Twitter. It's there on the screen. STLR Superfan Dad. Yes, we now went over an hour for the show, Jeff, because I had to say my Twitter handle is the longest one ever. Hit me up. Let's get together, take a picture. I'd even like to do a small, short live feed from the stadium if we can do that. So reach out to me. Hopefully I'll see a lot of Steelers fans there. I don't like going to Ravens games, but when I let my wife pick what time of year she wanted to go to a game, she felt the middle of November was a great time to go watch football. So that's what we're going to go do. And hopefully I'll see some of you there. But for now, yes, it's a big week coming up, but take some time and enjoy this win. I know this is a game I'm going to want to rewatch several times just because it just had a lot of craziness to it.
So here's the thing. My final thoughts are simple. You have every right to nitpick parts of this game because there were a lot of aspects of this football game that were not clean, whether it's the fake punt, whether it's the decision to do whatever, all these different things, the decision to not to kick the ball away instead of taking the ball to start the game. We can nitpick all we want, but damn, is it nice to nitpick after a win. And this team has now won 4 games in a row. They're 7-2. They are atop the AFC North. And oh, by the way, the Ravens are coming up this week. So I can't tell you enough that I hope that everyone that's watching this, listening to this, doesn't matter where, that you are glued into Steel Curtain Network this week. We are going to bring it like we do every week, but it's going to be amped up just a little bit more. Why? This is the first division game for the Steelers this year, and it just happens to be at home against the Baltimore Ravens. This is going to be a big one. So steelcurtainnetwork.com. Everyone go check out the website. You'll be writing from me, Dave, a bunch of other writers, steelcurtainnetwork.com, and all of our podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, we have so much more that's not on YouTube. My Let's Ride podcast, Dave's Pittsburgh Standard Time on Thursday, our audio-only shows. Go check those out. But, man, Dave, it's a win. Another win. Maybe. You won't be back next week, but we'll be in touch. In the meantime, man, take it easy. Go Steelers. We'll see you next week on another post-game show.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.